Welcome to another episode of Put It Together live stream. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza. Can you believe it? It is December 21st, 2024. We're coming to the end of the year. I still look at my calendar and wonder where 2024 went. I just feel like, I know. We say this almost every year about every year. Like, where did the year go? It went so fast. But I really, truly feel like 2024 went by really quick, and there are so many things that I'm grateful for this year, so many things that's happened. But don't forget, before the end of the year, we will have the recap show where we're also going to be doing all of our predictions, horoscope predictions for next year. So stay tuned. The Card Devo is coming back for the final show of the year. To all our friends watching us on Facebook and LinkedIn, thank you for watching. Please share this on your page so that other folks can watch along with you. If you're watching us on YouTube, please scroll down, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. It'll let you know every time there's a new show on the air. For those of you watching us on Instagram, thank you for joining us. Although your comments cannot appear on our pages, I am keeping an eye, so make sure that, hello to all our friends on Instagram. If you're making comments, make comments, and I'll make sure I'll let our guests know that you're commenting and that you're here watching the show. Thank you, everybody. We also have comments, so make sure that you, throughout the show, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, post them on there. We'd like to hear from you. My guest today is somebody that I've been wanting to have on the show for a long time. We became friends. I'll tell you about that in a minute. We became friends a while ago, and I've always been so impressed with all her hard work. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Natalie Sanchez is the director of the UCLA Family AIDS Network, where she manages a network of providers serving over 400 women, infant, children, and youth living with HIV in Los Angeles. Natalie is a two-time UCLA graduate and holds a master's in public health and a bachelor's degree in sociology. She is well known for her work as a creator, executive producer, and writer of the award-winning telenovela web series Sin Vergüenza, which addresses HIV in Latino communities. Natalie has created and led some of the largest and most successful multicultural HIV campaigns, as well as implementing a combination of public health strategies to reduce HIV infections in Southern California. Natalie is a filmmaker and uses film to educate, train, and increase awareness on health and social issues in Black, Latino, and transgender communities. Through End the HIV Epidemic initiative, she created Chasing, a 2-episode film on meth and HIV for gay men, and expanded the Confessions podcast, a docuseries podcast that is a collection of stories from women living with HIV. Natalie is a member of the State Office of AIDS California Planning Group on HIV, STDs, hepatitis C, and harm reduction, and a member of the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV/AIDS. Man, I think Natalie's a hobby. She doesn't have enough to do. Natalie, ¿cómo estás?
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Go ahead, sorry.
No, good morning. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And I know we've been talking about this for a while, so it's great that we fit it into 2024.
I know. I was like, si se pasa el año, if the year goes by and I don't have her, like, I failed as a host. But for those of you always wondering how I meet my guest, I first met Natalie in Puerto Rico. We met at USCHA 2 years ago. And for those of you that have ever been to a conference and know, there is always a day, probably the last day of the conference, where I hold court at a table and do readings for people. And Natalie was brought over to the table. And that's how we met. But I'd already known about you before then, but I never met you. And needless to say, I was so impressed. I'm still impressed by you. And then this year, we finally had the opportunity to really work together. You want to talk about that a little bit before we start?
Yeah. I'll say I remember meeting you, and I think that our initial reactions, just because you're such a soulful and insightful person, I think every time I've met you, I probably cried in our deep. So I was a little nervous coming onto the show. I was like, oh my goodness, I hope I don't cry again. But no, I really feel like I'm just connected to you in that way. And aside from us connecting on personal issues and work-related, we did have the opportunity to work on the Alianza conference this year, which was held in Los Angeles County and focused on Spanish-speaking Latinos in Los Angeles area who are living with HIV. So we put on this conference for over 300 people that were in attendance, and we worked with, doctors, case managers, benefit specialists, a talented group of Spanish-speaking presenters to be able to provide up-to-date information to Spanish-speaking clients. So it was great. I mean, you really worked that check-in table. That we had processes. I'm pretty big on the big ideas, but really rely on a team, to execute and make sure that there's order to the chaos.
It comes from my years as working in events and promotions and stuff. But I want to do a shout out to our friend Jasmine Rojano, who's actually the person that introduced us. And she was the one, I blame her for all of this. She invited me to the Alianza meeting and just to check it out. She's like, just come see what's going on. I was like, okay. Then I ate pizza and me quedé. And I ended up being the secretary. So it was an honor. But by the way, let me just tell everybody, the conference was a success. We did, not because I was part of it, but it was a total success. And we look forward to next year for an even bigger and better conference. So I will be there. I'll sign up already.
Yeah, it was so impactful. I was remembering, I had seen people who had been involved in prior years, and really this sense of gratitude for us bringing back Alianza. And this feeling of people, but LA County hasn't forgotten about them. And that was really the sentiment that I got from this year's conference, that they felt like we remember them and that something was being put on to support them. And I think they were very grateful for that.
Yep. It was really cool. And a shout out to everybody that participated. It was from this, I guess, staff, because we were staff, from the staff to the attendees, to the speakers, to the vendors, everybody. It was just amazing. Cuando la raza se junta, we do some really good stuff. Let's just say that.
We sure do. Yeah. A collaborative effort, and it really requires people rolling up their sleeves.
And, but let's get started. Today is about you. So Natalie Sanchez, tell us how you put it together.
I put it together. I know, I was thinking about that, how I put it together. And people see me like on my social media and they're like, you're traveling everywhere. And a lot of it is for work. But I think how I put it together and keep it together is I spend a lot of time with my family when I'm not working. So I have two 90-year-old grandmas, a 90-year-old and a 91-year-old. Yeah. And so they were very just instrumental in raising me. I have a lot of nieces and nephews. And so when I can, like when one of my nieces plays soccer, so I get to go see her soccer games. Just hanging out with the family, being a normal person. And then being at home for my daughter, who reminds me that I need to increase the amount of food that I'm cooking at home. So it's, I can be, this person, this, wonderful, like, career-oriented person, but it always comes back to the home.
You brought up, and I'm going to go in that direction first. You brought up your grandmothers, and you're a hard worker. I'll raise my hand. I know that I work a lot, but we're right there, match. Do you think that our culture, our social norms, do they influence the way that you work or the things that you get involved in?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think the social norms of like providing for yourself, not relying on others, which is also hard too, because sometimes we do need help and we need to ask for help. But I think from my grandparents, it was always, you got to work hard, you get paid off. And it's also that old mentality, right? Like that you reap the rewards for what you sow. But then on the other side, having studied sociology and being in healthcare, I also know there's just structural, infrastructures that do not provide that equal playing field. And so the other piece is, just trying to get involved in other things aside from work. And so for me, it's also getting involved in media and representation and the need, because there's a void of having representation of Latinos. And so, even in healthcare, when we're looking at materials and there's no materials, or if there are materials targeting the Latino community, it's just translated from the English, whatever was created. And so really seeing that void is like, no, we need to do something different. We need to do something that's more representative, that has those cultural nuances. And so I think that's why I put a lot of work into like my day job, but also like, where is that void and what can I do?
Yeah. I call it the gringo Google, because the gringo, you can always tell when it's a gringo Google. See, it's just, you're like, I know you just copied and pasted this over. How does it influence, because you just mentioned, I mean, the work that you do, but the people, when you started working in HIV, and was it that hierarchy? ¿Sí me entiendes? Like, was it the connection between your grandparents and you're like, okay, now I know directly who I'm going to help? Does the question make sense?
Yeah, no, I feel like my grandparents were very independent. And so like they're working and they retired pretty young. So my grandpa served in the military, and he was retired. I feel like since I was little, my grandma was still working a little, but by the time we were young adult, like in middle school, they were all retired. My grandparents and my grandmas and my grandpas. And so it was like the sense of like you work, then you retire, and then you take care of family, because my grandparents were very crucial to raising all of the grandkids. But it wasn't about helping them. I think it was about helping others, but also learning in that process, like trying to make that connection. I don't think that connection was there early on in my career, like that this is something that would affect and tie back to my family. So I do have, family members who are LGBT. So a couple of my nieces and my nephew and my daughter who identify as queer or LGBT. And so it was like that circle of like, oh, no wonder I've been helping this community, because it's really paving the way for them and trying to support a more accepting society.
It's a real aha moment in our lives as advocates when you're like, the universe has been training me for this. Like, right? What brought you into the HIV community?
I think I was pretty just out of undergrad looking for a job opportunity. I had a sister-in-law who was working in the nonprofit, and she says, oh, they have an opening. And I actually I thought I was going to be a social worker. I was really, kind of had my mindset that I wanted to be a social worker for children. But, she's like, there's this opportunity, just kind of get your foot in the door and see, there's different departments. But as soon as I got into HIV, I was surrounded by, it's just a passionate group of individuals. And I think what really has kept me here is that I've had great mentorship from people who were there during the ACT UP. And so for them is really the creating a space for me and bringing me to the table that I always felt like I had a part in it, even though I was new. So they never held that sense of like, you don't know what it's like, different generations. They were very much come into the circle, we need your help. You're young, you have the energy. I guess I'm no longer as young as I used to be, but it was their passion. And then we got involved in a lot of collaborative efforts of feeding the homeless and people living with HIV during the holidays. And it was just those opportunities that made me feel like I was living with purpose.
Yeah, for everybody out there, that is such a shut down comment. Like, you don't know what it's like. Well, obviously, we don't know what anybody else's life is like, but we are getting a little older. Nos vemos bien guapos, but we are getting a little older. And sometimes we need to pass the baton down and recognize the energy. You may not have the experience, but if you have the energy. And the last thing is, I always feel like HIV advocacy, you don't get into it, it calls you.
It does.
Right?
It does, yeah. It's called me and I haven't left.
So from the time that you started to the work that we're doing now, and although the show is not about politics, we have to acknowledge that we are coming into a year of political changes. Over the years that you worked in the HIV community, what are the major changes, both positive and negative, that you looked at?
So there's a lot of scientific advances. So, that has been a positive, just to see the type of medications that are now available, whether it's for prevention, like the long-acting injectable PrEP medication, or for treatment. So there's a lot of progress. And then on the other side, though, is always, there was a recent report on the invisible Latinx impact of HIV. And so while there's been a decrease in HIV overall, that there's been an increase in HIV infections in the Latinx community. So I think a big part of that is just feeling like we're doing the work, and there's a lot of great work organizations are doing. There's just not the resources for us to expand and then to realize the same impact that we've seen in some of the other communities who have had a decrease. And so, yeah, I think that's the work that we have to do. The other piece, like I said, I think I've talked about, like, there really isn't this equal playing field. So addressing the social factors, the economic factors that impact communities of color. And so as we enter a new era where they want to pretend that those don't exist, and look at it from equity standpoint, like, there's so many things that the community needs that you can't compare us and give us the same resources and expect the same change.
But I do admire that you are very resourceful. You've always managed to do something, which I was going to talk about this at the end, but I'm going to bring it up now. Tell us about your podcast, Confessions.
Yeah, so that's with my team, and so it's a collaborative approach, and we have a wonderful team who work with women who are living with HIV, and we were trying to just be innovative and bring ways of bringing women together to talk about their stories. And so initially we thought about doing a book, where they would write and do these writing exercises. And then later on, we came to find out Christy's Place had a book on those stories, which is great. And I was like, okay, well, that's wonderful, because we can, maybe encourage women to go that route into Christy's Place, if they're interested in that. But for our women, and I think part of it is also the language, Elia, our social worker, runs a support group for Spanish-speaking women. And so when it came time to doing writing exercises, like, that's where the project kind of stopped. Like, they loved talking and, they have their support group. But I think writing can be very intimidating for most people, and so I was like, well, let's come up with something different. And that's where the podcast idea, because there's great storytellers. Again, we're hearing them talk and share their stories. And so for us, it was about capturing those stories and being able to share it. And I think most importantly, being able to share it with other women who are struggling with their diagnosis or those that are newly diagnosed, kind of like what to expect. And so it's better to hear, they're going to get the information from their providers and case managers, but it's different getting that information from somebody who has a similar lived experience.
Yeah. And los Latinos, we're storytellers. Like, we love el cafecito, el panecito, la comadreada. That's what we do, right?
Yeah. And it's been, a great way just of, like, bringing that visibility to women who are living with HIV. It really goes against the myths around, who gets HIV. So, like, this misperception that you are promiscuous, you're a sex worker. And while there are some of those stories, a lot of the women, again, the way that they were infected was from a primary partner, from a husband, from, long-term boyfriend. And, and so for them, it's also just getting that off their chest of, like, this is my experience. But also, I think we end with, there's a life after a diagnosis. And I think that's what we hear a lot of women say is, they don't say HIV is the best thing that happened to them, but it definitely changed course for them to start living different and start living with purpose.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that part there. Although, I always say I don't want anybody joining the club, but for me personally, HIV gave me a career. It gave me a path to follow. So now the conversations are in Spanish, correct?
So they're in English and Spanish. Season one is English and Spanish, and it's focused on Latino women. Season 2 is focused on Black women. Season 3 is our all Spanish season, and season 4 is in English, and that one focuses on pregnancy and substance use and recovery.
Wow, congratulations. And you can find it primarily on Spotify. Go to find Confessions, But is it on other sites where they can find it? Or is it just
we have it on Apple Podcasts. We have it on Buzzsprout. We have it on, I think, almost every
all
stream.
across the board? So
Yeah.
go check it out. Look up Natalie Sanchez Confessions, and you'll try to find it. Check those out. So moving on, because you're not just in the HIV community, you're also a producer, filmmaker, director. How did you get, I mean, obviously living in LA, I feel like everybody in LA, at some point or another, you are connected to the industry somewhat. How did you come to connect with filmmaking?
Well, I wish I was connected to the industry. The closest connection I have is my dad used to be a painter for the studios. And so, but like I always felt like that was separate, my dad. And again, I think as a child, right, you think I'm not going to be nothing like our parents, at least that's so I didn't really enter like film in the same way that most people do, like the traditional. I entered it through the HIV space. We had a funder who wanted us to do something innovative, and we thought about doing educational videos, and we did a lot of the HIV 101, LGBT cultural competency, and it was very much like similar to if you go to a presentation, you're being talked at, and we expect people retain this information. And so even though it was through video, it's just, I was like, okay, we're kind of running through the motions. And then I had one of our funders say, do something innovative. Throw me an idea. What idea do you have? And we're like, well, if we want to educate and inform the community, let's, and we had a team that brainstormed, and we're all like that aha moment. Let's do a telenovela. Like if we're going to reach Latinos, let's do a telenovela. None of us had experience in doing a telenovela. So shout out to my creative partner, Dr. Hilda Sandoval, but also to a lot of the team that were working in the HIV clinic who were part of this creative team to help put this telenovela together. Because I think it was the authenticity of the story. So many of us had been working in the HIV field for over 10 years. And it was really just talking about those similar stories and how do we package that into these different characters. But it was that experience of doing health education films to then doing a telenovela to saying, I love film and I love this medium of communication and connecting to an audience in a way that other platforms don't.
Yeah. And I always mention how la cultura, how we're raised. Like if there was an abuelita or a tia, one of them watched the novela, and at some point or another, we were in front of the TV watching with them. And even if you never watched another episode after that, you got glued. You remember the villanas, those villains and the characters and the heroes and the stories. I remember watching them. I went to high school in Monterrey. I remember coming home from school, doing my homework so I could watch the novela at 3:00. It would be on. So it's, again, it's those things. It's the Proust effect. It's those things that bring you those memories.
Yeah.
That will help you create the new memories. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what's funny too, just thinking again, making that connection back and putting it together from like my childhood is, I remember watching my sixth grade teacher made us watch Stand and Deliver in class. And that movie had a tremendous impact on my life because what it instilled in me, it was like showing me at a young age in the sixth grade, like, one, people don't believe in Latinos. Two, like, you're expected not to be anything more than just workers. And then, really, three, putting your time and effort into education to get you out of these stereotypes that people have of you. And so basically she was instilling in us that she believed that we could go to college and she wanted us to go to college, into college. And so I always connected with that film. And so as a filmmaker, it always goes back to like, what are those lessons? If somebody watches this, that gets instilled into them. Those are like just lifetime, lessons, key takeaways that just kind of live in you forever.
I think we have a question here for you. It says, good morning. How can a fledgling production company get its anonymous status to scoring some type of significant production?
I don't know if I have the answer to that. For me, all of my projects are funded. Like, so I do the grant writing for them. I secure, funding mostly through the HIV and healthcare realm. So I don't get any film funding. I have started exploring and trying to do writing and filming outside of the HIV space. And so there's a lot of things you could get connected on through social media and apply for film grants. So I haven't done that yet, but I'm hoping to do it because there are projects I want to do that are outside of what I've traditionally done.
Excellent. So I want to talk a little bit about, you haven't brought it up, but I want to bring it up because I want to make sure that chasing.
Yes.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that came to be?
Yeah. So Chasing is a film about HIV and meth in gay men of color. And so this came about, again, looking at the void of where is the need in the community, and this understanding of like we're trying to get people virally suppressed, but one of the barrier for individuals to get viral suppression is if there's substance use or addiction related, because we know health will take a backseat to their addiction. And so for the creative team is, I think, I'll talk personally, have been impacted by addiction. And so family members who are impacted by addiction. So for me, it was really wanting to also on a personal level explore that and understanding that world of addiction and how do you help somebody get help. And so for us, it was about creating this storyline of, the addiction piece, the spiraling out of control, but then what does recovery look like? Because I think people think it's like a just say no to drugs or just make that decision, that switch in your head to like that people are consciously deciding to use drugs, but in reality, it's a disease. And so really helping people understand it's a disease, that relapse is common, and that everybody's journey to sobriety can be different, that there's many different paths for trying to get the support you need to sobriety.
I'm going to show them in the background. This is just the shot. I'm going to be playing it just a little bit so people can see about it as we talk. Tell us a little bit about the script, the actors. I got the chance to watch it, and I was blown away. And as a 17-year clean and sober person, poof. Like I was like, girl, get out of my head. When did you hear my story? This is so common for a lot of gay men, particularly as a person living with HIV. Script, how did you get to it? How did you finalize it? What was the process like?
Let me just introduce you to the actors. So that's TJ, and that's David Tyresa. And we had worked on a previous project together. It was a sexual health campaign for gay men of color. And so I kind of just stayed connected to them on social media. And so as we were developing the script, it was like, okay, I definitely want to reach out to this person and this person. We worked with them in the past. And I think for actors, it's a big risk, right, to be associated with an HIV film or substance use film. But, these are people who I could say are really not just about being actors, but about being advocates and using their platform to support raising, these issues in their communities. So I'm very thankful that they said yes. And as far as the development of the script, we work with an advisory group. I know people are always like, well, how can a straight woman come up with this type of storyline? Or why would you come up with this type of storyline? I'm deeply connected to the community. And so for us, it's also bringing the people who have that life experience to be part of the process and helping us. And again, talking about that authentic storytelling is that, we want to keep it authentic. We don't want to fluff it up for media. And that's typically what we hear is like, we tell the story based on people who are not part of that community. Whereas this is really leveraging the knowledge and expertise from advisory committee members to make sure that the stories that they want to tell, that collectively we're telling a story that is one for that community, but also like providing the information on how you get out. So it's the education piece, but also the resources.
Yeah.
And
And I think something you just said was very, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
no, and instilling hope. I think that's what it does. It also, we want to instill hope in people.
I think one thing you just completely, it's like you didn't fluff it up, and no, y'all did not. I feel like sobriety stories or addiction stories, you don't need to add to it. They're already hard or tragic on their own. I mean, I went through rehab, and in the 3 months that I was in rehab, just sitting around the table having a cigarette and a cup of coffee, you hear some of these stories, and 9 out of 10, it's just like HIV. It's like you look at people and you're like, really? You're an addict or you're an alcoholic? Like, nah. Like you're, Mr. Smith that works in a bank and like has 2.3 kids and a dog and the station wagon. Like, what? But it was really cool the way that y'all presented. And I was very excited when I started watching it that it was a Latino person and that connection, because within the Latino community, we don't talk about HIV, sex, sexuality. There's no drug talk. There's no alcoholism because
it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's just Tuesday and we decided to have some beers and that's normal. What has it taught you? What has it taught you about you? What has it taught you about humanity? All the work that you've been doing through the years.
Yeah, I think probably chasing has. I think in seeing Vergüenza and the other in the later seasons, you see a little bit of things that were impacting me, like the father who's an alcoholic, the addiction, the relationship tensions. But I think this one was really more the humbling experience, because I think as I entered my career, I always thought I was helping other people. And so even though we had worked with like Tarzana treatment centers, Cry Help, and I think I was just so naive to think that addiction would impact my own family. And so for me, it was that humbling experience of just coming to acceptance that addiction, like you said, can impact anyone, and that impacts good people. It really does. And it kind of just takes over their life. And I think I also told you like how like my grandparents, like we were raised, like you work hard, you don't ask for help, you don't ask for a handout. But in the addiction world, you need to ask for help. And you need those resources because a lot of times you can't rely on your family, because if there's denial that addiction exists, that addiction is a disease, they just don't have the right resources to help you through that process. And so for chasing, it was really just that coming to those humble terms of, acceptance, ask for help. There's people out there to help you, and that this is something that can impact anyone.
Yeah, it's so interesting as I've grown in advocacy, to realize that addictions, mental health, health issues, my family from Mexico found such a clever way to hide them and not tell you what really was going on. A quick story: when I was after rehab, I went to a party with my parents, and my dad was like, "Vas a tomar algo?" And I was like, Coke. And he's like, well, you don't want to drink? I'm like, no, I'll just have a Coke. He's like, you want a shot of tequila? I'm like, no. Like, Dad, I just got out of rehab. Like, no. He's like, pues una cerveza. I'm like, Dad, beer's alcohol. Like, I can't drink that.
It's just one.
Yeah, it's una. Like somehow being surrounded by your family, like, you're okay. Like, we're not going to tell anybody. But I was like, no. Like, and even in cancer, my dad was like, because it was anal cancer, he just couldn't comprehend, like, what do you mean anal cancer? Like, ¿qué es eso? Because all he ever knew was breast cancer. It was like, and I don't know how it works with you, but like to outgrow the cultural boundaries that were set for us, because we didn't even do it. We were just born into them. And then you do something like chasing. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was going back and working with people who have gone through that world of addiction and recovery, and also talking about like how, like exactly like you said, is how our families have this just different understanding, and so really being able to connect to resources outside of your family is very important. The one thing I did want to bring up as far as a resource that was helpful for me, and again, I'm not sure who our audience is, but Al-Anon was very helpful. So I was the person who had a partner with an addiction, and so for me, like I think for many years, I just really struggled with not talking about it and really living in shame and guilt, feeling like I somehow contributed to that person's addiction. And with the family, like again, I knew it was hard to talk to my own family about it or to their family about it, because they reinforce the blame, the shame, the don't talk to anybody about this. Like this is not appropriate. And so for me, using Al-Anon, where it was people who had gone through similar experiences, and it's about just talking, releasing, and really just trying to live the best life you can, whether you're staying with that person or not. I think that was just something extremely helpful because it really gave me a different lens to look at addiction, and also in making that disconnect between the addict and myself, and where the two of us came together in our lives, and really that understanding of taking care of myself as an individual first, instead of drowning in the sinking ship.
Yeah, it's something in AA we like. You throw in the rope, but you don't go in the quicksand. Like if you don't want to come out. Yeah, like so. We have two more questions. Let me just do this one first. It's like, how do you acquire the funding? How have you learned to fill out grant forms to lead to success?
Let's see. So I'm in addition to being a film writer, I'm also a grant writer. And so for me, I have like 12 years of experience doing grant writing. I did it 2.5 years full time. And so, for me, it's just learning how to say what I'm going to do with that funding, and how I'm going to do it. I did take grant writing class, but really, I think the best way to be a good writer is through practice. Like the more you write, the better you become. Now there's tools such as AI that can help you edit or help you give you a good start in writing. But again, the more you do, the better you become. And and also some of it is also just personal relationships. I think people know my work, and they know, again, like that money is going to stretch, no matter how small the grant is. Like if it's $5,000 grant, we're going to do, like with our Confessions podcast, we started off with a very small amount, and then to be able to do what we did just to demonstrate like that this was a good idea. And then once we demonstrated that, then we could apply for additional funding.
Nice. And we have another question for you. Do you feel one has to hit rock bottom as a person of color to get motivated to ask for help?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that's something we also want to prevent, is like the old school thinking is you have to hit rock bottom. Some people still believe that, and I think that's very accurate for many people. But just recognizing when you're in this tailspin of unhealthy behaviors, being able to ask for help before you do lose the job, before you lose your housing, before you become homeless. Like there are opportunities to ask for help before that.
Yeah. I was one of those people. I tell people, I was like, my story was so cliche. You're in court, you lose your apartment, you have to leave everything behind. I left so much furniture and clothes, and you end up living in somebody's extra room, and then you're in rehab, and you're like, this is probably the best thing that's happened to me. For those of you out there, my AA birthday is June 21st, 2007. I was there till August. It was the best summer of my life. I tell people right now, it was summer camp. I grew up, I was 36 years old. I went in a kid. I went in not knowing life. And in 3 months, they broke me down, built me up. I was like a Jenga game. They were like, done with this. And they're like, Now build it up with the blocks that you need to become a better man. And I'm so grateful. Bay Area Recovery Center in Dickinson, Texas, thank you so much for taking me in and working with me. But all that you do, all that you're involved in, like I'll go back to the original question. Mentally, how do you put it together?
Oh, mentally. Yeah, mentally, I really do function off of being extremely busy. So, as much as I say like, I need a rest and self-care and all of those things, which are very important for many people, and are important to my life too. But I love like the fast pace of having multiple projects I'm working on, because that's what keeps me like stuck to my time and actually completing things. And that's kind of how I put it together, like just staying busy, staying connected to different organizations, different projects. And then right now I'm doing script writing with the writer of Handmaid's Tale. And so I was telling people, as if I have all this time in the world, I decided to take a formal script writing class and
Nice.
on Monday nights. And it's all about accountability in that class, because we have homework and we have to come into class with the homework prepared. And it's like, okay, I already have a full plate, but I keep adding to this full plate.
But it's like life buffet.
Yeah.
Have I eaten too much? No. Otra cookie. Let's go.
Yeah, keep going.
Where does that fire? I mean, we talked about your relationships with family and stuff, but where does that fire come from inside? How does it stay burning?
Oh, yeah, I think the fire comes from just trying to accomplish as much as I can in this lifetime. I think the sense of like, there's, again, going back to, there's all these voids and lack of things in the workplace, in media. And for me, I was like, oh, how do I fill that void? The other connection I made quite a while ago, and I don't think I've ever said this out loud to anybody, but I had an uncle who passed away before I was born. I think he was 19 or 20 years old. So I just remember as a kid, and our family really didn't talk much about him. And he died from an overdose. And but I just remember when I was younger, like I was 16, 17. And then when I hit 19, I was like, oh, I'm as old as my uncle would have been. And then as I got older, it was like, oh, I'm older. And oh, well, like my uncle never got to, and I never met him because he had passed away before I was born. But I think that just connection to death and knowing like you can go at any age. And so for me, it was always like, how do I live this purposeful life? How do I get things done? And I think there's just that sense of urgency in me to do as much as I can.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'll tell you. I'll share a story with you off camera, because this is.
Because then you'll make me cry.
Yeah, I don't want to cry either. I'm like, this is the last show of the year. No lloro, no, it's not gonna happen. There's just very pause. And by the way, folks, we've had some really good conversations, but I think this is like the longest conversation we've had without interruptions, because we're always in a setting where we're working or we're around people, and somebody's always like, Natalie, Daniel. So yeah, this is kind of cool. I have you to myself right now. So we come to the point where 15 minutes before the end of the show, where we share some words of wisdom. So Natalie Sanchez, what words of wisdom do you have for our audience?
Oh, words of wisdom. Words of wisdom, just kind of surround yourself around positive people, whether that's your family or your chosen family. I think it's those people that kind of create that healthy environment for you to live a life of purpose. I think I've been able to live a life of purpose, but I also think through my projects, I have been able to bring in people who are living their purpose or finding their purpose. And I think with the Confessions podcast, the women who have been able to express their stories and really connect to, this is not something that just affects them, where they know that by telling their story, they're helping someone else through chasing, working with incredible individuals who have gone through the recovery process, who are incredible to this day, who also have that purpose of helping other people with experience of addiction and helping them to, find some type of support. And hopefully that leads to sobriety and recovery. And what else? Yeah, I don't know. I think the other words of wisdom is I feel like I'm always learning. So I'm always reading, listening to an audible book. And for me, learning is really important in my own growth.
Isn't it? I think you're just amazing. But if for those of you that are watching that know her, know what I'm talking about, you're just a tornado of energy. Not just straight. Let's just clarify that. Yeah. Before people are like, what? No, it's just, it's just like you just have this energy and you walk and people notice you. And I'd seen you, obviously, because we've been to several conferences together. But the being at Alianza and actually working with you for the first time and seeing you work and seeing you take charge. And there is as a fellow Latino, there is I'm not going to cry, stop. There is a proud moment to see a Latina in charge and doing it well, doing it with dignity, lifting people up. And I was surprised. I was like, she's not wearing a flower. You always wear a flower in your hair. And
I'm wearing a Christmas tree.
I said, okay, oh yeah, but if you see Natalie out, she's usually wearing a flower in her hair, and I'm like, at Alianza, people are like, I'm like, do you see the lady with the flower? That's her. Go find the lady with the flower. Okay, people knew exactly what we were talking about. Like I'm just extremely proud of you for whatever that's worth, and the work that you do, and I look over to what you're doing at times when I'm starting something new and moving forward. And you're one of those people, there's a big group of people, but you're one of those people that I'm like, like, how would she handle this? And I go down the list of names on my list and be like, how would so-and-so handle this? How would so-and-so? But you're definitely on that list of people that I'm like, how would she handle this? And you're a mentor. I haven't officially told you that, but you're a mentor, and I really enjoy the work you do, and I'm so proud of you. And on behalf of the people living with HIV, thank you for all the passion, time, and work that you put into it.
I really appreciate all of those words. I really appreciate it because I think, it's not often that I get told that. I do get told that, though, by very close friends, but it's very validating. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you. So we've got, where are we? Where's our time? We got about 10 more minutes. Let me just tell people about what we got coming up before we let you go. For everybody watching, remember, this is the last show of the year, but we'll be back on the 30th. We've got the Crab and Goat show, so come and join us on that day. I'm going to bring up your email back in just a second. The Crab and Goat show will be on the 30th. That'll be our last card reading show of the year. So make sure you join us. It's probably going to be an extended 2-hour show, depending on how many guests we have. So come join us for that. Get your reading before the new year. Kristen and Daniel will be back in January. So we are off for a couple of weeks. So join us back on January 8th for the new shows of the year. That's our new season. Put it together. We'll be back January 11th. I'm sorry, I'm not back till February because I've got some conferences to go to. So I'll be back in February 1st. We're going to be doing our first live show will be at La Comadre's store, Comadre Candles in Downey. We're doing the first show of the year will be in person. Very cool. Plus, she's opened up the doors. So right after the show ends, right after the interview, I'm going to be setting up a table and doing live card readings at La Comadre's Candles in Downey. So I will make sure to post that email information up. Look for the address. Come in, buy some candles. She makes amazing candles. That's where I get my Peru candles. Bien mexicano. Bien mexicano. I get my Peru candles, and she sells the chocolate candles and the pan dulce candles. They're all amazing. I have them all, so just so you know. but come check us out. Any last words before you go? Anything else? What's coming up for the goals? Or I know I have this question. Are you a New Year's resolution or are you New Year's goals?
New Year's goals. So
And
I always write up what my goals are for the year. And I think I'm just challenging myself to do more writing and working on a couple of scripts on a series as well as a feature-length film. Again, these are all like things I would love, like to live my dream to just be, make it in the industry. But yeah, I'm just challenging myself to write and to complete those projects because I like to start some, in my personal life, I like to start a lot of projects and then I don't necessarily finish. So I would say that that's something I'm working on in the new year.
Well, I'll tell you this much. Side conversation now. This year, for everybody, if you didn't know, this year was the year of 8. So 2024, 224 is 8. So this year was the year of infinity. So we always, particularly for people like us, I'll say us, who are workaholics, let's just raise our hand. Let's own it. For those of us who are workaholics, if you kept working and felt like you really weren't moving, it's because we were in an infinity. So you always ended up back, your energy ended up back where you started. But it doesn't mean that we were moving forward. We're just kind of learning, processing, gathering. Next year is the year of 9. So projects that you've started this year that are truly meant for you, next year will find their conclusion. So yeah.
I got to keep writing until the end.
Yes. Like I said at the beginning of the show, like your connection to the industry, I'm like, you're gradually making your way to writer, director. Did you direct?
I didn't. No, so I haven't done directing. I do the executive producing. So I secure funding, support with producing, writing, creating.
Yeah, because I feel like that's a whole new, talking about conferences, always thinking about conferences. That's a whole new workshop for the industry because I know Flash in Houston had their novela for a while, and then you did yours. And so for those of you that have been following me on some of the sites, I just got a new job, which I'm starting in January. But we're thinking about doing our own live streaming, networking, filming stuff. Oh, you got one more question? We go. Oh, thank you and happy holidays. Yes, thank you. Thank you for. So I feel like this is a whole new way. Plus, I tell people we don't know where we're going next year financially when it comes to grants and funding, and we got to get creative. We got to do what we can to get the message out.
I do want to do a plug for the National Latinx HIV Hep C SUD conference. Our next year, it's April 29th through May 1st in Las Vegas. And Pedro had an idea to have a film festival. So last year we had a film festival. When I started, again, with our telenovela web series, we were one of the first to do film. And so there wasn't a lot of people doing film. Now, so many more people in our industry are doing film for education, for connection, as part of their programs. And so it's been wonderful that like last year that we had a film festival, and this year we'll have another film festival in Las Vegas for the National Latinx Conference. So it's really just, again, I think I always welcome people into the world of filmmaking, also into the world of podcasting. I think it's so important for Latinos, people of color, LGBT populations to contribute to storytelling in whatever format that they choose. But yeah, there's room for all of us.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm sending my resume and my headshot, so because I want to be in one of your projects. So
wonderful!
Throwing that in there.
That's
Pull
great.
My actor card out. Yeah. I was telling people, I was like, I'm gonna have to tell her, I'm an actor too. Like I do everything.
I'm so happy you said that. Yeah, that makes it easier when we're trying to cast.
But no, I don't have a lot of things to do. By the way. Do you want to do this? Yeah, sure, let's do it. Do you want to take another class?
Yeah.
¿Por qué no? Yeah. But I've been that kid since I was in kindergarten, first grade. Like the first thing that I ever volunteered for was Cinco de Mayo, Dancing La Cucaracha with Miss Martinez in kindergarten in Dallas, Texas. I remember they walked in, they're like, we need volunteers. ¿Para qué? I don't know. I'm in. Like, let's do it. So for those of you, it's in your blood. I guarantee you it's in your blood. But I feel, and as I watch you, and before we go, like it's raising our hands that gets us into places that we normally wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to create things that had we stayed quiet, we never would have.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, your reputation precedes you. People know who you are. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's always such a pleasure when people reach out to me and they want to collaborate.
We have another good friend there, Carla.
Hello, it's my friend Carla. Hello,
Yeah.
Carla.
Carla.
Yes, from San Diego, and she's one of those fierce Latinas that are making waves in healthcare, in pharmaceutical companies, and she's incredible.
There's the saying that says, Dios nos hace y el diablo nos junta. God makes us and the devil gets us together. And she's definitely one of those people that you know when you're with her, like it's fireworks. Yeah. So Carla, I want you on the show next. So if you're watching still, like, I would love to interview you and the amazing work you do in the community and down there in San Diego. So, well, thank you so much. It's such a, I'm so glad you were here, heard your story, and that you're the madrina for the end of the year program. So I'm going to put you in the green room for a little bit, but don't go anywhere. I'll be back for you in just a second.
Okay. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. Thank you, Mama. For everybody watching, thank you again. It has been an amazing year of interviews, although I didn't have as many as other seasons. The guests that I got to have were really excellent. Thank you for all the guests that come on my show that wake up early on a Saturday morning and volunteer to be interviewed. Thank you, all of you who watch us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Thank you. I'm sorry, Instagram. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for the support. I want to thank my boyfriend and partner in business, Christian Ramirez. Thank you for being there with me, for the craziness, for the bad moods, for the yelling sometimes. I want to thank my co-host, Richard Wayne Kilmer II on the Crab and Goat Show, for his support and trust in the work that I'm doing. And, nothing else but thank the universe and God for everything that they've done for me this year. Again, thank you for watching. I promise to bring you more interviews and more shows next week. Catch the Crab and Goat Show, catch Christian and Daniel, and catch Put It Together. For now, I want to say thank you to all of you. Feliz Navidad, Prospero Año Nuevo. I'm not going to cry. All the love, and we'll see you next year. And this is Daniel Garza saying, hey, put it together. Bye.